And we're live. Hello and welcome to episode number 11 of WP Café, the show where we chat to WordPress professionals about practical solutions for solo and small WordPress development teams. Now, if this sounds like you and you don't want to miss out on a single value-packed episode of WP Café, then please hit the subscribe button. You should find it down there somewhere. And we also release lots of WordPress development-related videos that you might also find useful. And if you haven't already subscribed, we also have a podcast too, so check us out on Apple, Spotify and Stitcher, where you will find this episode shortly after we've finished today. If you're a tweeter, you can also follow us at WP Café Show on Twitter for updates of upcoming shows, as well as snippets from this and other past shows.
So on today's show, we will be talking about building the 2021 theme. 2021 is the latest default theme, which was shipped with version 5.6. It's the second default theme, I think, to make use of the block editor. And as we'll discuss, it also makes some preparations for full site editing. Default themes are always interesting to dissect and discuss, and that's what we'll be doing today with our two guests, the design and development leads of the 2021 project, Mel Choice-Dwan and Carolina Niemark. Mel, Carolina, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hi. So let's learn a little bit more about our guests. I'll start with you, Mel. Can you tell us who you are, your story with WordPress, and how you ended up being involved in 2021?
Yeah, so when I started out as a designer, I was working mostly at agencies, doing a lot of contract work, and that's where I really picked up WordPress. Got really into the community, got to go to a WordCamp, and then from there just kind of fell in love with the project and started volunteering. And I joined Automatic about almost 8 years ago now. And yeah, it's just been contributing since. And so this past year, the 5.7, yes.
Yep.
I was forget which release we're on.
Me too.
Was a little bit different because the project wanted to do a all female and non-binary run release cycle. And so when Josepha first announced that, I think last year, I kind of raised my hand and put my name in the ring. And so yeah, I got picked to do the design for the default theme.
Awesome. That's great. I can't wait to get into that. And Carolina, can you tell us who you are, your background with WordPress, and how you ended up on the 2021 team?
Well, I've been volunteering and contributing to WordPress for about 11 years. And this is the first year that I actually worked professionally with WordPress at Yoast, which is great. So, of course, the situation last year was completely different. I had just lost my job because of COVID. I was trying to learn how to become a successful freelancer. And I also saw the tweet from Josepha and just raised my hand that I did want to contribute to this release, which sounded really exciting and like a great opportunity. And then by the time after, I think it was late June, when we actually started working on 2021, I had no clients. I was really struggling with my freelancing. So I decided to I'm going to do this full time. I'm going to go all in and just work on this theme until release.
Amazing. That's quite exciting, quite brave.
Definitely.
Freelancing is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can vouch for that for sure. Well, that's brilliant. Okay, so we've got loads of questions. I was saying just before the show, I'm always really interested in the default themes because, as a developer, that's kind of how I cut my teeth, as it were. Learning WordPress was just dissecting and reusing and hacking the default themes, and I think I've still got a theme out in the wild that was based on 2010, so it's come a way since then. But there's loads to learn, and I think Mark and I, when we've spoken about the default themes before, and actually a lot of things within the WordPress project, is we just don't really know how these things come about. You know, you hear of you read the announcement blog post, and you're like, okay, yeah, there's a new theme coming, and it gets released, and you have a look at it. But there's obviously a lot of work that goes in to get to that point, and a process there that we just don't know much about. And that's, I think, where we'd like to start today's conversation is, I guess, like the release cycles are fairly regular, and the themes come out basically once a year. But when does development or the ideas for the new default themes come together? Is it like a year before? Is it 2 years before? When does the whole process start? I guess go to Mel for that one.
It's a couple months before. I think we started in June. Just like I think that's when we were announced as the leads. But we didn't start developing, I think, until August, maybe end of August.
Okay. Yeah.
When was the release?
December.
Yeah. So it's about 2-3 months before.
Yeah.
A bit further.
So there's usually only a couple months lead time. A whole year would be nice.
Well, yeah. Okay. So why is the lead time so tight? I mean, we kind of know these are coming, so.
I mean, that's a great question.
Is it, I don't know. Is it a controversial answer, or is there really no answer? Is it just the way it falls?
I think it is just the way it falls. I don't know, Carolina. You've also done like at least 2 of these.
No, I agree. I think that we would love to have more time, but this is just the way it happens.
Yeah.
Because it's when the full release is starting to be planned, not just the team, but the whole everything that's going to be in the release. It starts about the same time. So.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. In a lot of cases, especially with 2021, what we wanted to ship in 5.7 was dependent on the theme, but also the theme was dependent on what could be shipped for 5.7. So there's a little bit of back and forth, especially with the Gutenberg team, of like, we need this to be able to launch 2021, but also like, this is what we have, and so this is what we can support.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting time to be involved in one of these projects, isn't it? Because things are changing so fast.
Yeah.
Things were changing as we were making the theme.
Yeah, absolutely. And lots of retesting and more testing on top of that. And then, of course, at the end, there's still going to be things that break. But
of course.
Yeah.
So who puts the theme team together as part of that release?
So I think in this case it was Josepha. Before she was on a 3-month sabbatical right before the release. And then, so Josepha Hayden, and then Chloe, what's Chloe's last name? Bregman? But they are kind of like, I think Joseph is the executive director of the WordPress project, something like that. So it's usually either like her or before she was executive director, it was Matt himself picking the leads for the team.
Yeah.
And he still has input, but I feel like Joseph has taken a lot of the I don't know, like production and management on her plate.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but Mel, were you design lead, and Carolina, were you development lead? Is that correct?
Yes.
And who else, if anyone, made up the rest of the team? You don't need to name all the names. I know I have to put you under a bit of pressure, but like in just a rough kind of makeup, or like in terms of numbers and what people did and their responsibilities and things.
We started out with, I think, 6 people.
Okay.
But eventually, things happen and people needed to drop off, and new people will join the team and help us contribute.
Yeah.
We had, sorry for this pronunciation, Jessica Lishik, and we had help from Ellen Bauer, and eventually we had Ari Statopoulos, we had Kjell Wigstad, and of course we had Kelly Dwan Choice.
And are they a mix of developers and designers, or weighted mainly to developers, or what's the sort of balance?
Definitely weighted more on the development side, because we always need more developers.
Yeah.
Ellen Bauer is, I think she's both a designer and developer, but she focused really on design feedback with me.
Okay.
So we like bounced ideas back and forth at the beginning before we really like announced anything.
Cool.
So
I
yeah,
guess
we ended up having a bunch of contributors from Yoast and from Automatic.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. So once the team was chosen, what's next? Do you set some kind of goals for the project? Was there anything specific that you needed or wanted to achieve as part of 2021? Like where do you go? How do you kick this all off?
I feel like it depends on
I should say who I'm going to. Mel, I was going to put that one to you.
It really depends on the team because I feel like it's different every single year based on the makeup and like what people's expertise is. So Jessica ended up kind of falling into the project management like lead for the team.
Yeah.
And since she is also a developer, she was able to do things like put out the like initial packages from GitHub when we were like before it was in core. So we ended up doing like all the development like in GitHub, and then once we got to, was it RC? I think. Yeah. We moved to like putting it into SDN.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. And so like kind of like how the organization goes really depends on who's working on it. That's one thing, like if I could go back, I feel like it would be cool to like really do more of like a formal kickoff, because we didn't really do one. We kind of just jumped into it, and I think we would have benefited from taking the time to like structure it a little bit more.
Yeah.
But there's like the time crunch aspect of it.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. So then, Mel, do you have to get going first? Like, is there any development work that can be done alongside the design work, or do things kind of wait for you at that point to get your designs to some kind of level?
Yeah, we definitely had to wait for me for a little while. I did have a little bit of a head start because like once I knew that I was going to be leading, I could kind of start exploring ideas, like really before the release kicked off. But there was a little bit of dev that can be done, like right at the beginning, mostly figuring out the framework that we were going to use. I don't know, Caroline, I can talk to this a little bit more.
Yeah. So, Mel, do you have any guidance to follow on design, or is it just a completely open book? You know, I can really just
completely
go nuts
open.
with what I want to do. And do you have to present different concepts and say, like, I've had a go at these three things, what do we think is the best, and then we'll move in that direction? Or is it literally, I've designed this, I love it, this is where we're going? I just wondered if there's a process of sort of like voting on it or what, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it depends on the release. When I worked on 2017, I had like three like really rough concepts that I presented to Matt. And usually it's like we talk to Matt about the concepts, he gives us feedback, and then we kind of decide from there like which direction seems the strongest. And so this release, I ended up doing a bunch of like Pinterest boards to like gather a bunch of inspiration. And I had like a few ideas that I wanted to do just based on like recent trends.
Yep.
So I had one, I could actually show this Pinterest board if you want. I don't know if we have screen sharing.
We could try. Let's try.
Okay.
This might go horribly wrong, and we have to remember this does go out as a podcast as well. But so we'll have to be quite descriptive.
Cool, okay.
Has that worked? It might have worked.
I think so.
Cool.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, so I ended up starting with 4 different concepts. One that I called tall serifs and diffuse gradients. So it had a lot of like tall serif fonts. A lot of them were condensed. Kind of inspired too by some like the early Mac ads.
Yeah.
Also, so like really soft gradients. So like gradients that like are super colorful, but then like fade out and diffuse out.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and so that was kind of like the first concept that I had. Wow. Then I also had one that was based on printmaking. So I did a lot of printmaking in college. It's something I try to keep up as a hobby, and kind of looking at like rissographs, or like woodcut prints, and like kind of taking that like really like textural, like physical aesthetic and bringing it to the web. This one was a really hard concept, and we didn't get super far on it, honestly. It actually, I don't even think this one made it to like a mock-up or a style tile or anything.
And are these what you presented to Matt and Josefa then, to start with, about the direction?
So this we ended up doing like mostly internally. So talking with Carolina, talking with a couple of my coworkers at Automatic, who like give me design feedback on things. And so what we ended up presenting to Matt was more along the lines of like trying to remember if we showed him style tiles. We actually may have not. We may have waited until we had initial like mock-ups and concepts. So the way that I kind of approached it was like find inspiration, take that inspiration, kind of like synthesize it down into style tiles, which are like really rough mock-ups just with like a general idea of the concept and the overall like look and feel. And then from there, I think like the like printmaking one made it to that stage, and then we dropped it after that because it was like a little too, I don't know, abstract. Yeah. So we ended up with 3 concepts that we style tiled and then turned into mock-ups. So one with the tall serifs and the gradients, one based on like protest material, just because there's been a lot of global protests in the past couple of years, and so like kind of taking inspiration from like the like handmade aspect of like, I don't know, like speaking your voice and like democracy and protest.
Yeah.
And then the last concept I ended up calling Digital Native, and it was focused largely around like things that you can do because of CSS. So stuff that like is like very like web first. So there's overlap and like kind of like fun shapes and whatnot.
Yeah. I when I was just like doing a little bit of research for this, I found this Pinterest board, and it was the digital native one especially. It was cool to see that because you could really see the 2021 in it. Like it was cool, even though like it's a real eclectic mix. There was something there that you obviously managed to distill into 2021, which is really cool to see.
Yeah, and it's funny too because like it's such like a strong visual concept, but because the default theme really needs to be accessible to a lot of different audiences, like there is a lot of like distillation that has to happen to make it something that is less opinionated and more like could appeal to a broader audience.
Yeah, I love the idea as well, like moving away from you're still inspired by print and things in the real world, but like it's kind of celebrating digital for itself, not pretending to be something else, and moving completely away from kind of skeuomorphic stuff, and really that this is digital. We are natives, we are digital natives, so it's kind of the interface kind of reflects that a little bit. I think that's really cool.
So that was the concept that seemed the strongest, and the one that we ended up going with as the basis for 2021.
Yeah, brilliant. So once you've decided on that, how did you go about actually designing the theme? Once you had your concept, like what do you do next?
Throw a bunch of ideas into Figma is what we ended up doing.
Okay.
So I kind of like have like a basic framework for like what we need to design. Like we need to have some sort of like basic homepage design. If only just to like show off, like we need to have archive pages, we need to have blog post pages. So like thinking about like the kind of content that like needs to go into the theme and then approaching it from that direction.
Yeah.
So to start, we did a lot of homepage just because like it's a really good way to just be like inspired and like figure out just like a general aesthetic. We tried a bunch of different colors before narrowing down to the green as the default. Throwing like some opinionated stuff into there, but like still like, because you can like change the background color to whatever you want, allowing it to be a little more versatile.
Yeah, cool. All right.
And Carolina, what point do you sort of see these, and are you able to come in and sort of say, well, I wonder how we do that with WordPress, and I wonder how we do that, or is that not at this stage, or is that later on?
I found the design process and seeing everything put together in Figma was very, very interesting for me. But we did have to go back and add more details when we saw that, oh, wait, we need the style for a widget, for example. So it wasn't super easy for me to get started with Figma at the start. So we did adapt along the way and made changes.
So
stuff like page navigation, and comments and whatnot, we had to like go back and work on.
Yeah, I can imagine that, because like when kind of Gutenberg came along for us, it's really changed our design process. We don't do loads of design. We've probably half the projects we do design work for, and suddenly it wasn't just like mocking up about like 5 to 10 templates. It was mocking up every block, but also trying to work out how they all work together and what that block looks like when it's in a column or in a group, and when that one has a background and the one next to it doesn't have a background color, and like just the combinations that you have to account for is kind of mind-blowing. How did you deal with that? Like, what, both from a design and development point of view, because it's hard, right?
Yes, mind-blowing is exactly the right word. There are so many combinations. And, you go inside the CSS files and you remove margins depending on where a block is placed.
Yeah.
And then you try to match, the editor and the front, and it takes time. And,
so much stressing.
We try to keep the design. I don't want to say simple, because you can do so many things with it. But one of the most advanced things we did was definitely the button block, and that was really difficult. And also things like we had a dark mode.
Yeah.
And this does go back to the planning a bit, because dark mode almost did not make it. It sort of was added in somewhere in the middle, and that was quite a big mistake. We should have had that as one of the focuses from the start, definitely. But being able to change the background color in the editor and then try to make sure that the text is still readable, that was not easy.
Yeah, there's so many edge cases.
Yeah. So there is a lack of testing material, like combinations of blocks that we can just load in the editor to test with. Yeah. So you almost have to, you have a base, and then you have to redo it and add items to these testing materials all the time. So it's something that we definitely as a community can do better, so that we all can have this material and share it.
That would be amazing.
Yeah. Because there's like the theme testing data that we've used for forever, which is like so great for like kind of like classic WordPress themes. But we don't have the same exact thing with Gutenberg, just because there's so many variations.
Yeah, it's sort of like, I feel like this is not something that can be done manually. We almost have to do it programmatically to make sure that we actually have all the different combinations, because there's too much. And the theme unit test, while it's available, the code for the blocks in the editor, sorry if this is kind of technical, it is out of date, so it doesn't match. If you add a block in the editor today, the HTML markup is not the same as it is in this theme unit test file that you can download and install as a demo content, so it's out of date.
Yeah,
having it done programmatically would be really cool. Like if there was a way to like constantly generate new test data, and like even if there's like some sort of like visual regression testing that like Gutenberg could provide for themers, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really would be amazing. I'm just thinking about the site I'm building at the minute, and I just have pages after page. Like I've usually got like a page per block, and then like all the different ways I can kind of twist and turn that block. And then I try to like create a few templates with like various blocks all kind of interacting with each other. But you've only scratched the surface of on what can actually be done and all the different combinations. So
that was like the last 30% of the theme process was like just like finding all of these different cases and trying to fix them.
Yeah.
And then, all of a sudden there is a user or a client who wants to use a specific block plugin, and you realize, the styles it's not enough to only support the core blocks.
Yeah.
You have to adapt it for every website almost.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely like a perpetual problem too. Like, how much can we support without necessarily knowing like what plugins are going to add in terms of like markup and their own styles?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I guess that's a never-ending problem, though, isn't it, really? I suppose with the number of plugins out there, you're never going to be able to catch them all, are you? So is there any sort of... Is there any block test data then with WordPress anymore? Because like you said, the old classic theme type data has obviously been around for a while where you can import it, but is there something with Gutenberg that you can use? And has that got specific things that like must pass? This block must work with this block and this variant and so on. Or is it more of a trial and error testing? Caroline, what do you think?
It's trial and error, unfortunately.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So someone's out there watching and does have great solutions, please share them with all of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's definitely one of the problems with it being like a much newer approach to building WordPress themes is like we don't have the same like strong background of tools that we do with like a classic theme.
Yeah, I can imagine it's a problem.
With full site editing coming too, that's going to change up entirely as well.
Yeah.
So it's just like a constantly moving target that we are trying to hit.
It's a problem that everyone's having to deal with as well, isn't it? So it'd be good to solve it in a way, wouldn't it? Really?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
To get something out there that can help us all with it. That'd be good. Definitely. Yeah. Moving on then to development, Keith.
Yeah, well, Caroline has just put her hand up. Caroline, to jump in there.
I wanted to mention that there is ongoing work with the Gutenberg plugin to make the markup in the editor and front match better. And there's work on the alignments, for example, for the group blocks, and in child blocks, inner blocks, when we place them inside. And there is work on actually removing lots of the editor CSS.
Interesting.
It's going to be difficult for theme modules to adapt, but the final result, it's going to be easier for all of us.
Yeah.
Way easier. At least that's my hopes.
Yeah, that's cool. Because that is it's part of the difficulty now, isn't it? Because I kind of feel whenever we're quoting for these custom theme builds, and like we've embraced Gutenberg as fast as we could, as fast as we thought was reasonable to do so, and we are loving it. But one of the real challenges for me, as the kind of front end guy in the team, is that I feel like I have to build two themes. It's not quite like that, but I make the front end look like it should in the mock-ups, and then I'm like, oh god, I've got to do all this for the back end now as well. My friendly neighborhood seagull is joining in the conversation. And I noticed there was a particular approach with 2021, and this was one of the things I was interested in whenever it came out, is how you were going to kind of deal with that problem. And there was a within the theme, there's like a front end like Sass file, and then there's an editor Sass file for each of like the blocks and modules and things like that. Why was that approach chosen, and did it work? Could it be improved? I don't know, because I'm looking to improve my own process, but interested in your thoughts around that, Carolina.
I do believe that the main reason was that the HTML markup for the block in the editor are different from the markup on the front. So you have to add styles for both. And we didn't want the editor only CSS to be loaded on the front.
Yeah.
But it's also about, making it as easy as possible to actually remove it when it's no longer needed.
Yeah.
And to make the changes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So by having block-specific CSS in their folders, it makes them easier to find and work with.
Yeah. And splitting the editor on the front end. Yeah, it does. And it's actually, I pretty much stole that approach for a recent project, and there's a little bit of duplication, isn't there? Ways to try to minimize that as much as possible. I know you made extensive use of custom properties. Is that the right customer? In the theme, so like that makes certain things easier. So you're like declaring your kind of globals and reusing those, so you don't have to set those for the editor and the front end. Everything kind of gets pulled through, so that's super useful. Was that one of the things that came from the Seedlit theme? I saw that the 2021 was based on a theme called Seedlit. Was that CSS structure inspired by Seedlit, or like how did you decide to kind of structure the SAS files and all the assets and things like that?
Yeah, we started out with Seedlet and we removed a lot of things. We still ended up with almost 300 CSS variables or custom properties, but we didn't keep the same SAS structure.
Okay.
Jessica helped us update that, and we followed her great advice.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's really nicely organized. So I've stolen that as well.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that we were also able to explore first while design was still ongoing, because that wasn't necessarily contingent on the design itself.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. So I guess just coming back to Seedlit, I think I first came across that whenever 2021 was released, and it was kind of referenced. Why was that theme chosen as a starting point in particular? Carolina.
So how do I answer this question? We were asked to use it.
Okay.
Pretty much. I'm not sure if this came from Matt or if this had been a discussion.
Yeah.
Where Mel has participated in.
Yeah, I think Matt saw it as a good way to get ahead, just because we don't necessarily like have a good basis for block themes yet. So like for a while, like underscores was really like the like best kind of like take it, break it, make it into your own theme, kind of like backbone. And so that's kind of like what the automatic theme team was trying to do with Seedlit, was like find a good block-based basis that we could like base all of our future themes off of, either through child theming or like forking. And so it had a lot of like the initial block support kind of like built in, even if we like redid most of the stats.
Yeah. Okay.
It's definitely a high quality team. We still had to make adaptations where we had to adapt the code to what Gutenberg was giving us at the time, because that had already been updated. We also needed to remove specific plugin support that a default theme cannot have, including, I think it was Jetpack and WooCommerce.
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
And then we also switched out the block patterns.
Yeah. Yeah, because the block patterns, weren't they quite a major kind of part of this release in terms of, I don't know if 2020 had any custom block patterns, or was this the first theme to
They
ship
didn't.
this?
I think it came out before block patterns were available. Yeah, but so they have them now. That was actually another thing we worked on in 5.7 was adding block patterns to some of the older default themes. But 2021, it was really like the first theme that we could package block patterns in with it. And so they were like a really big part. So like kind of like how I thought was that the theme itself needs to be versatile, but things like block patterns we could get really opinionated with because they're optional. They're like
Yep.
icing on the cake. So that's where like I feel like I put a lot of the like really strong aesthetic choices into was those patterns.
Yeah, I think that's where the theme, like certainly from the from the screenshots and everything as well, that's where I kind of got really interested, because there were some cool layouts. You managed to build some really cool layouts, like the kind of overlapping.
I'm impressed, actually,
yeah.
what we published.
Yeah, it was great. Like the kind of overlapping kind of content and the sort of semi-masonry style kind of gallery layouts and things like that. Really, really cool stuff.
Yeah, it's great fun to build layouts with, and I am looking forward to the actual default block patterns that are in WordPress to be updated. So that will also be interesting.
Oh, cool.
That should happen in the next release.
Yeah, I hope so.
So what are the default block patterns? Is that patterns that you're going to ship with kind of core rather than a theme?
Yeah, we have a couple in core right now. They're okay. I mean, they were made like to showcase like kind of like as an educational tool. I think the goal long term is to not package patterns with core at all. Once we have the pattern directory and like integrate the pattern directory really closely with WordPress, so you can like easily like browse and find new patterns.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, like it is a new thing. We like need to provide some like nice looking defaults.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like it's not really a core thing to me, that, but like I said, it's there to showcase what can be done and then move it away later on, maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. And like the cool thing is that since it's all like core blocks, once we get rid of the patterns in core itself, like nothing will break.
Yeah.
Because it's just like is a preset.
Blocks
it's
on
not
the page.
like adding like plugin support into a theme, and then if you get rid of that plugin, like suddenly stuff is broken.
Yeah, of course it's saved as post content, so thankfully it's going to last. If you have added to a post, then the pattern can actually be removed.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool. That's very cool. There were some other goals, as far as I'm aware, on the project. One of them being accessibility. I don't know kind of what stage that came in, but I know that you were aiming for kind of AAA accessibility standards. Did you achieve it? And like, how did that all come about? What's the story behind the accessibility angle?
The accessibility was absolutely there from the start. It was one of the most important points. Everything from colors to sizes of the buttons and how the menu works and everything.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the last part of the question?
No, that was the question. It was just really, I guess, how that came about. You said that was baked in from the start of the project. That was kind of one of your kind of core goals from the start. And I guess that my last question was, did you achieve the AAA kind of standard in the end?
Yeah. So it's not possible for a team to follow the web content accessibility guidelines because they are content guidelines. If you add content to your website that is not accessible, then the team is not going to matter. But the team definitely, 2021 definitely gives you a good base, a great start to help you make an accessible website. But the content is extremely important. For example, if you add images, you need to add your own alt texts, alternative texts. And if you're talking about video content, of course, you're going to need a transcript. So AAA is not possible, but we try to make the team follow it as closely as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, where we had control, we were able to make it follow the standards. And we lucked out too, because like Carolina is really great with accessibility. The WordPress accessibility team is fantastic. We were able to collaborate with them, like especially on the design side. I was able to like get feedback from the team before we even coded anything.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So is there anything else like that? I guess just coming right back to the start, I keep talking about like the goals of the project. Was there anything else that this project gave you an opportunity to push forward or try out, or what were some of the things that were interesting from a design and development point of view that we maybe haven't covered so far? Mel, is there anything from a design angle that you were excited about?
I mean, I feel like for me it was patterns.
Yeah.
That was like the big goal for me was like designing some really cool looking patterns
Yeah.
using just Gutenberg technology. And there were a couple things that we were able to like push upstream to the Gutenberg team to like get them to like fix or implement before the release. But largely it was like, what can we do with what we have now?
Mm-hmm.
And like, how far can we push Gutenberg and like the block editor?
Yeah, that's cool. Carolina, what about from a kind of technical point of view?
No, I agree with everything that Mel said. It definitely opened up for, as part. I'm a little bit to blame there because I didn't realize this when we started, but it opened up for closer collaboration with the core editor team and making changes to Gutenberg to work better for teams.
Yeah.
But now, when we have continued working with a team called TT1 Blocks, which is a full-site editing version.
Yeah.
This is becoming so much more important because we're actively updating. We're doing pull requests to Gutenberg. We are making changes and adapting together instead of, two different camps, so to speak. We definitely need to work closer together for 2022 and for the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we wanted to make a block-based version of the theme from the beginning, but we knew that we couldn't in order to hit the 5.7 deadline.
Yeah.
So we like always knew that we wanted to do it, but like we had to focus on the what we could ship at the time, and then
of course.
hopefully like make a block-based version of it after that, and that's still ongoing.
Yes, still ongoing.
Yeah, because
it's funny too because like full site editing is like still evolving, and being able to work on 2021 blocks is a good way to figure out where it doesn't work yet, like where full site editing still needs work, and also like kind of like how far it's come too, just because like it's so different than it was even like when we were working on the original 2021, and like where we're at now are just like completely different goalposts, I guess.
Yeah. So full site editing, it is coming soonish, right? Maybe. Do we have any
like
kind of...
It's either coming at the end of this year or it's not. I think there's like a cutoff date for deciding coming out soon.
It's the first date is next week, and then if we're not there's another chance 2 weeks after that. Okay. So either 5.8 or in December 5.9.
Okay. Yeah.
We don't know yet, if it's going to be. It's probably not going to be everything at once. It's probably smaller steps because it's big.
Yeah,
it's very big projects. Many changes.
Yeah. I still can't get my head around what it's going to do or how it's going to work or anything, but it feels like it's an absolute game changer. And I guess my question then, coming back to themes, is how does full site editing change the theming landscape? Is the goal to kind of remove themes? Do WordPress themes have a shelf life now where we're not going to need them anymore because everything's going to be able to be done in the editor, or will themes still have a role to play when full site editing is fully established? Like how is the landscape going to change, and what is a WordPress theme actually going to be in 2 years' time? Mel, or I don't mind. Yeah, start with Mel.
I think we're still gonna figure that out.
Yeah. Okay.
I feel like there's like themes still play an integral role because like each theme is gonna provide its own default templates, default patterns. Each theme is gonna have its own like really like strong aesthetics. What I'd really love to see too is like themes that are built to be distributed, to be able to like kind of like package in really smart defaults, but then themes that are being built custom for clients be able to like turn that off entirely. So like you're not going to need full site editing necessarily if you're making like, if like you are a client and you've had an agency build your website, you're not going to want to go and like change everything. So it's really like, I feel like it's a tool for people who are kind of like site builders. So freelancers who might normally use something like Divi or something like Elementor or Beaver Builder, might now move on to full site editing, or somebody building their website for themselves, like a DIY kind of like web person, just like making their own site. And then somebody who might like take a theme and then customize it is really where like I feel like full site editing is going to be good for.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
And like people who build sites for other people, on like kind of like a higher, because there's definitely like a degree of like site building. There's like, I don't know, building a site for a major like university is very different than building like a small brochure site. And so I feel like there's still going to be like that big divide between the people making like super custom tailored themes, and the people who are able to like just like, it's like one person working on their own to like build a bunch of business websites.
Yep. It's got to be like one of the biggest challenges within WordPress is just like the diverse way that it's used. And like, it's a real challenge for the leadership team and you know, people like you building, you know, the default themes and anything to do with core is just satisfying all these diverse and distinct use cases. It's got to be a massive challenge.
Because like blogging is still huge, like with WordPress, but so many people use it as like a really good tool for building like a bunch of like smaller business websites. But then you get those like super highly tailored custom themes for like big media, for education, and they're all like totally different use cases. Like you're not necessarily building custom blocks if you're making a restaurant website, but like if you're making like a site for example, the whitehouse.gov site is using Gutenberg, and they built some custom blocks just for that.
Yeah, it's cool.
And it's super cool.
Yeah.
But I love to hear also more like of what Carolina thinks, because she's like kind of like, I don't know if like in the trenches is the right way to put it, but like you're like in the theme so much.
Yeah, so right now I'm trying very, very hard to learn how to contribute to Gutenberg. And it's not about, Gutenberg is not only about, you know, trying to create these blocks and make these blocks work together. There's so much else that you have to know. And it's also not, you know, it's not only about learning React. You have to actually learn how Gutenberg works and read all the documentation. But to the original question, yes, I believe there is going to be room for all sorts of themes. You will have classic themes. You will have teams that still support the classic editor plugin. You will have child themes. You will have pure full-site editor themes without any PHP templates. And then you will be able to have hybrid themes. So if you have a PHP-based theme, you can choose to add one template. For example, maybe you want your user to be able to customize the 404 page, which is not possible right now. Not only with WordPress, you would have to have custom solutions for that.
Yeah.
So there's definitely going to be room for everyone. And there's going to be room for a whole new generation of team developers who doesn't have to learn how to code. You will open the site editor, you will have a design where you place your blocks in the correct position, you will test a couple of different templates, different types of, you know, post listings, pages, with or without the comments area, whatever you want, a landing page or a store, and then you will actually be able to export that. And someone else will be able to use these templates for their website.
That's super exciting to me too as a designer.
You don't need to learn how to add JavaScript files. You don't need to learn PHP. It's basically drag and drop blocks, testing the layout and exporting it.
Yeah, cool. Since I'm a designer primarily, if I'm going to build a theme, like I might muddle through code a little bit, but like what I really want to do is just be able to like take my vision and put it down onto the page without needing to stress about like JavaScript, for example. And so I think it will open up WordPress to a wider audience of like, especially like people right now, like if I had to build like a really big client site, I'm going to rely on plugins. But if I had full site editing, I might not need to. Like I might not need to use something like Elementor, for example, or I might not need to use a theme that has built-in like layout editing support. But I could just use core and like just build with blocks. And I find that really exciting as like somebody who doesn't really code.
Yeah,
I think I changed like maybe like 10 lines of CSS in 2021, and that's it.
It's interesting because a criticism I think I've had of WordPress since kind of the Gutenberg project is that I feel like the barrier to entry has been raised to some extent because of the use of like JavaScript spanned React and these new build processes and things. It's certainly something that I'm pretty uncomfortable and unfamiliar with. But it's actually really interesting to hear you both talk about how that barrier to entry may have been raised slightly, but actually there's other barriers that are being like coming down in different ways. So maybe WordPress is kind of as accessible as it ever was, or even more so, to people getting involved in building their own sites and building themes and things like that. So yeah, it's definitely not a perspective I'd thought of before. So that's really cool.
I feel like that's the big challenge too, is that like there's so many ways you use WordPress.
Yeah.
And like building something super custom is definitely harder now because of, I think, just the extent you need to test things. And the fact that like there are new build tools. You do need to know JavaScript more. So while I think the entry level is getting more accessible to people, kind of the like custom stuff is getting harder. And like, how do we balance that? How do we find like a good middle ground? How do we make it easier for people who have been using WordPress and like making their like lives like working with WordPress for so long? How do we make sure that we're not leaving anyone behind? And that's like the big challenge with core.
Yeah, it's tricky, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Mark, have we had any questions? I haven't been keeping an eye on the comments.
No questions that I've thought big use to ask. So thank you for those that have jumped into the chat and asked some questions and comments and things. That was good. Particularly some on the full site editing. I think we could do an entire episode on full site editing.
Oh, you totally could.
In the future, so maybe that's a good idea to do. So it's certainly something that people have lots of opinions on and certainly want to know a lot about, I think, because it's obviously very different from what they're used to doing. So it's certainly something we could look at doing. We're kind of coming up to the hour as well, so I think we should probably try and wrap it up. So the last question from me is, if someone had aspirations of being a theme lead, either design, development, and being involved in building the next default theme, whether that's 2022 or 2023 or whatever it might be called in the future, I guess. Where should they start? How should they get involved? Carolina, what would be the first thing they should do?
If you have never contributed to WordPress before, I would suggest joining a new contributors meeting where you can become introduced with some help. I think those are twice per month or maybe one per month. And then start with smaller contributions. Okay. For example, we have a ticket system where all the issues and errors have been reported. We have a component called bundle teams. I think it's default teams, and those have all the lists of the issues that have been reported for 2021, 2020, 2019. If you find an issue that you can help fix, please do. And that's how you can get started. Cool. And to contribute to a release, there are call for volunteers before each release. Yep. And that's why you report your interest. And
is that on the Make WordPress blog? Is that where that's sort of like published and people can jump in the comments and say,
yes.
I want to get
involved. For the next release, this call has already gone out. Maybe we can link to it or something afterwards.
Yep, certainly. From a design point of view, Mel, is it similar process or anything different?
Yeah, I think starting with contributing is always great. Getting to know the community, getting involved. So we've had so 2020 was Anders, right? Anders Noren. So he's like a really fabulous designer and developer. And so I think 2020 was based on Chapin, I believe, which was one of his themes.
Yeah.
And so it was just like kind of I feel like an instant like community hit because it was great with Gutenberg. It looked fabulous. All of his themes look really gorgeous. And so I think so he was chosen essentially to like lead the release, like do the design of the theme, because his work is so impressive. So like even if you're not somebody who's necessarily like in the WordPress core community like day in and day out contributing, I think there is a lot of room as a designer. Like if you do really good work and stand out, there is a chance to get invited to like come and work on a core theme.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. Anything else, Keith?
I had two kind of just like last questions, I guess. And one is, what was the most difficult part of the process, and what was the most satisfying part of the process? Carolina, I'll go to you first.
Oh, wow. The most challenging is... Oh, there's too many things. Taking on the responsibility.
Yeah.
And you can't let that get to you because then you're just going to stop working.
Yeah.
And also communication within team, because everyone is a volunteer. You don't know who will be able to contribute and how much time and when and with what. So it's difficult, but it's also rewarding because I learned so much from doing all this.
I figure if you can pull off being a lead for a default theme, you can build anything after that. It feels like
not alone, but yes,
yeah,
it's a good start. It's a great honor and might be a once in a lifetime experience.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Cool, that's great. Yeah. And Mel, what about you? Biggest challenges, biggest positives?
Yeah, I mean the responsibility is so hard. Just knowing that like something you're building is going to be used by so many people.
Yeah.
And so like catching all those edge cases is big, because you're not like going into it, you're not going to catch everything. And so there's that, like, you really can't let that stop you from releasing it. Communication was also difficult because Carolina and I are pretty much on opposite time zones. We're like, Carolina's in Europe and a morning person, and I'm in East Coast US and like a night person. So there'd be some times where like I would sign on, catch her, have the whole day, and then like in the evening we would like catch up for her next day. And we had contributors kind of like all over time zones, and so making sure that we were all on the same page while not necessarily working the same hours is an issue in any global company, any like international like core project, whatever. But definitely the most satisfying thing for me is always launching, like having it be out there, and just like the first time I see someone using it, like, so I experienced this with 2017 too. It was like when I like first saw like a random site using it, I was like, oh my god, I designed that. And so it's like the same with 2021 is like I've now seen at least like one site in the wild using it, and it's just like super exciting.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it's good. Very cool. Okay, we'll wrap it up there. So let's finish off by just letting the listeners know where they can find more about you and follow you maybe. So Mel, where do people go if they want to learn more about you and maybe follow you?
So I'm Mel Choice on like pretty much all social networks, GitHub, WordPress core. And my site is melchoice.design.
Nice.
And I have definitely blogged a lot less frequently in the last year, as I think probably many of us have. But I blog every now and then.
Cool.
Hopefully
Thanks.
more in the future.
Yep. And Carolina, what about yourself?
Probably easiest to reach on the WordPress Slack channel.
Yep.
And my username is Poena. And on Twitter, at Carolina Poena.
Excellent. Certainly go and follow those. Thank you again to our guests. Thanks so much for joining us. Again, if you enjoyed this, you want to watch more, then please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of the content. And we look forward to the next episode, which is at the end of April, where we're joined by Ian Paulson and James Kemp, and we're going to talk about making money from WordPress plugins, which should be an exciting one. So thanks again. Thanks to those who tuned in, and we will see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
See you.
Thank you.